Good evening. Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. We're going to continue our shiur on the Chatzar Yosef, the new sefer that we just put out. And we are in chapter 7. This is part 3 of this lecture, of this chapter. Page 71. I have the nice version of the book right behind me. If anybody's interested, please reach out. My email is yosefzayRov@gmail.com. My first name, last name, @gmail.com. We will be glad to send it to you. Good. So we're going to continue where we left off. We were talking about a lot of different things last week, specifically regarding the story of Nero. Nero, the army general of Rome, that was sent by the Caesar of Rome to start the military campaign against the Jewish people after they refused, under the leadership of Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulas, after they refused to bring up the sacrifice of the Caesar, who sent the sacrifice through a Jewish person, Bar Kamta, who had a whole agenda, as we explained, all in chapter 6. Chapter 7 is the next episode, if you will, of that saga. So let's, again, one more time read the Gemara, because I think it's good to start with the Gemara just to know what we're talking about. And then we'll go into the Chatzar Yosef portion in 71 and see what we can reveal on this. The Gemara is on page 67. We're going to read it in English again. When the Caesar heard, what did he hear? He heard that the Jews refused to bring up a sacrifice. He sent Nero Chatzar, Nero the army general, against them. As Nero was coming along the way to Jerusalem, he sent an arrow to the east. It came and fell in Jerusalem. He sent another arrow to the west. It came and fell in Jerusalem. He sent an arrow to the 4 directions of the sky, and each one came and fell in Jerusalem. He said to a child, presumably a Jewish child, "Recite your verse to me. Tell me the pasuk that you just learned." The child said to him the pasuk from Yechezkel 25:14, which says, and God is speaking in the verse, "And I will give my revenge upon Edom in the hand of my nation Israel." Nero said, this is how you understand the verse. He says, the Holy One, blessed be He, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wants to destroy His house, meaning the temple, and He wants to lekapurei yadeh, to atone His hands with that man, referring to Himself in third person. He ran away and he went and converted, and out of him came eventually Rabbi Meir, one of the most important Chachamim ever. We went through different commentaries in the first 2 lectures, a lot of different commentaries with a lot of side notes, and now we're going to go into the Chatzar Yosef, page 71. It behooves us, which means it is our responsibility to point out a difficulty that is common to the Maharam Shif and the Ben Yehoyada. Those are 2 commentators we spoke about. Both of them said that Nero only shot 1 arrow to each of the 4 directions. They said that there's a total of 4 arrows that he shot, and each one miraculously somehow fell in Jerusalem, which was a sign for him to go and do the war, that he would be successful in the war. The wording of our Gemara is as follows: he sent an arrow to the east, he sent an arrow to the west, he sent an arrow to the 4 directions of the sky. If this approach is true, that it was only 4 arrows, right? They said that the last sentence, when it says he sent to the 4 directions of the sky, it means that he sent it to the remaining directions after east and west, which is north and south, which totals 4. Right? So if this is true, then the Gemara should have simply stated outright in a much simpler way, he sent arrows to the 4 directions of the sky. Just give me one sentence. He sent arrows to 4 directions of the sky. That will definitely mean he sent it to 4, he sent a total of 4. Or it could have said, he sent an arrow to the east, he sent an arrow to the west, sent an arrow to the south, sent an arrow to the north. That's another easy way and clear way to tell me that he sent 4 arrows. We might support the explanation of the Ben Yehoyada, who says there was 4 arrows. We might support it and say that, in truth, there was only 1 arrow sent in each of the 4 directions, and even though our Gemara could have simplified itself and included them all in one statement, like we just gave examples of, it didn't do so because it wanted to separately mention the arrow to the east and the arrow to the west specifically, in order to highlight all those things that the east and west represent. Like the Ben Yehoiada explained, he said he sent it to the east to see if the zechut of David Melech and Yehuda and Yisachar would stand for the Jews because they were there from the east side, and Moshe Rabbeinu was the west. Whole thing. In part one of the lecture, I believe we spoke about all that. So that's why the east and west was important, because they represented things. So maybe that's why the Gemara said those specifically, and then they just said 4 directions after that. But even if we say that, it's still problematic. Since if this is indeed true, that an extra emphasis was placed on the arrows to the east and west only, then our Gemara should have said the following. He first sent an arrow to the east, etc., and then an arrow to the west. I mean, the word first should have been added to show me that there is an extra emphasis on the east and west. But it does not say this. It just says east, then west, then 4 directions. Alternatively, if the wording of our Gemara was, he sent an arrow to the east, he sent an arrow to the west, he sent an arrow to the rest of the 4 directions of the sky, then this approach of Maram Shif and Ben Yehoiada, that was 4 total, would be better supported. Again, there's so many different ways the Gemara could have said it simply to mean 4. But our Gemara says instead, he sent an arrow to east, then west, and then all 4 directions of the sky. It seems then that the total number of arrows shot was not 4, according to our humble approach. It was not 4, but another number entirely, as we shall explain below. Before we get there, let's just point out another difficulty with the commentators. First, we want to clean up with the commentaries, and then we want to add what we have to say. There was another glaring difficulty with what the Ben Yehoiada mentioned. Again, this was in lecture 1 of this series, of this chapter 7. He mentioned that in the name of his colleague Rabbeinu Yaakov, namely that Nero shot to the west to see if King David's merit, his zechut, would stand and protect the temple. And what's the connection of west to King David? He said over there that since David founded what would eventually become the Western Wall. That's what he said. The Western Wall that's still standing today in Yerushalayim. Because David Melech is famously, his contribution to the Bet HaMikdash was to build the foundation. He never built the walls. He built the foundation, then his son Shlomo built the Bet HaMikdash. However, what the Rabbeinu Yaakov said is historically inaccurate. It's just wrong. It's just historically maybe there was a scribe error on what they wrote, but it was just wrong. Since why? David only laid the foundation of the eventual first Bet HaMikdash. The first David built the foundation of the first Bet HaMikdash. He died, then his son finished building the first Bet HaMikdash. While the Western Wall that remains to this day in Yerushalayim, that was a part of the expansion of the second Bet HaMikdash constructed by King Herod centuries later. So it's a historical inaccuracy. David HaMelech had nothing to do with the second Bet HaMikdash, let alone the expansion of it. Right? The wall we have today is just an expansion. It wasn't the original second Bet HaMikdash walls. So that's the difficulty we had to point out. The Maharal asserted, what did the Maharal say also? He said that the arrows did not miraculously fly all the way to Yerushalayim and fall into the city. Right? What was the Maharal's approach? It wasn't that when he shot the arrows they flew and changed direction. Maharal just said rather they fell naturally onto the ground, and the focus of the divination, of the test he was doing, was to see towards which direction the arrows would point when they landed. And then what happened was, according to Maharal, they all landed pointing towards Yerushalayim, and that was a sign for him to go and wage war against Yerushalayim. The rest of the commentators seem to disagree, right? All the other commentators said no, it was actually a miraculous thing where he sent it this way and then it just changed direction and landed in actual Yerushalayim. If the Maharal's approach was accurate, our Gemara should have simplified and said, Nafal Birushalayim, that it, meaning the arrow, fell upon Yerushalayim, Beirushalayim, regarding each shooting of every arrow. But this is not what our Gemara says. Instead, our Gemara adds an extra word to this phrase, by every arrow shot. It says, Ata v'nafal Birushalayim. It came and fell in Yerushalayim. Ata means it came, meaning it moved. There was some locomotion. It moved something unnaturally, implying some sort of coming, in other words, significant travel or trajectory of the arrows into Yerushalayim itself. So we're going to disagree respectfully with the Maharal's approach and go with the others who said that it actually flew. It was a miraculous thing. The arrows flew in Yerushalayim. Good. Now let us begin to clarify our Gemara and these difficulties. Taking the wording of our Gemara at face value, as we alluded to above, it stands to say that Nero actually shot 6 arrows. Not 4, but 6. And if you just read the Gemara and do simple math, that's what it says. He sent one to the east, sent one to the west, and one to each 4 directions of the sky. 1 plus 1 plus 4 is 6. It seems the chronological order in which he shot them was east-west, east-west, north-south. Because the first 2 arrows, the Gemara says specifically, sent to the east, sent to the west. And then it says 4 directions of the sky, that means he went again. We're saying he went again, east-west, north-south.
Why not go finish north-south and then go east?
So we're going to explain. We're saying he went east-west, east-west, north-south. Explanation is as follows. We're on top of page 72. 72 is a very important Kabbalistic number. At first, Nero intended to do a divination with the arrows. He wanted to do a divine test, as was the common pagan practice of the time. They love doing these things, right? We are forbidden from doing these things. We spoke about that at length in lecture 2. What's a divination? What's nichush? What's kisum? We're forbidden. But he was a goy, he did it. His plan was to shoot them and see which direction, and see toward which direction, I should say. See toward which direction they would naturally fall. And if they pointed toward Yerushalayim, then it was a good omen for him in the impending war, as the Maharal explained. So we're saying that we're taking the Maharal, what he said, and we're using it. He said that his whole intention was to see how they would naturally fall and where they're pointing to. We're saying, fine, that was his kavanah at first. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to see how they would fall naturally and then go towards that place. Rashi mentioned that he fashioned this divination as he came close to Yerushalayim, presumably along with his legions of Roman soldiers, right? He wasn't alone. His soldiers were with him. Geographically and historically, considering that the capital of the Empire of Rome was northwest to Yerushalayim, right? Rome is northwest. It makes sense to assume that he would march onto Yerushalayim from the north, right? So because Yerushalayim is here, Rome is here, he have to go this way, and then go southward, which is the north of Yerushalayim, right? He has to come this way down. Because there's the ocean here, right? The Mediterranean Ocean here. That's why he has to go like this. So when he's coming down southward, it's the north side of Yerushalayim. He desired first to probe and answer to his request from the Roman pagan deity, which they called Sol. You have to remember, he was an idol worshiper. And what he's doing is he's testing the mazalot. He's testing the constellations. All of the deities, all Avodah Zarah is connected to a certain constellation, right? That's the main Avodah Zarah. And why that is a whole lecture. Rabbi Tatz has several lectures about it when he talks about Avodah Zarah. Idol worship, very famous, very, very important to listen to and hear. But we're saying that he first wanted to see what the sun god of Rome, Sol, would say about marching towards Jerusalem. He was known to, why? And Sol, this god Sol of theirs, was known to be a patron of the soldiers. The god of the soldiers. The most prominent member of the constellations to which pagan deities were attributed. He was one of the main gods, the sun god. This is why Nero sent the first arrows to the east and then to the west, as our Gemara says, east and west. Why? Because east to west is the direction that the sun's daily travel from the Earth's perspective, from the east side, east horizon, to the west horizon. So he was testing to see what that god would say, sun god. This seems more practical than the explanation of the Ben Yehuda that he shot to the east and then to the west to see if the merit of Moshe and David and others who were connected to east and west would protect the Jews. The Ben Yehuda based this on several nuanced religious details, which seems unlikely for Nero, a Gentile army general, to have been aware of at the time. So it's more practical to assume this, that he was trying to test his own God than all the details of, Yehuda and Issachar were in the west, in the east. How do you know that? You know what I mean? Again, when shooting these two arrows, he expected that they would rise and fall naturally, like the Maharal said, but this is not actually what happened. It is known historically that Romans entreated deities, pagan gods, of many different peoples. And they would often add them to their own pantheon of gods as they expanded their empire and encountered more religious cults along the way, right? Because they conquered the people around them. The more people they added, they asked them, "Oh, what do you worship? What's your religion?" And they showed them, and they said, "Oh, that's cool. It's added." And they added it on. It's just, they added it on. That was the thing. No originality. So too, Nero surely recognized the God of the Jews. Everyone knew about the God of the Jews. That was actually one of the main reasons that the Romans were so fed up with the Jews. Like, they worship an invisible God. How can that be? Right? There's all these legends that say that when they came in to destroy Yerushalayim and they got to the temple, they said, "Oh, they must be hiding a big idol in there." And they went inside, and what they found in the Holy of Holies was the Ark. And the Ark was just like a box with stones in there. So they were furious to know that the Jews, insisted on worshiping an invisible God.
Why did they think that was the idol?
I'm sure some of them did think, but they could tell that it was just a box. It was a fancy box. Idols back then were actual solid things and images of usual, living things usually, not boxes.
And there was the angel.
There were the angels on top, right? That's true. So maybe they did think. Nevertheless, let's see over here. The Romans were aware of the God of the Jews, right? But Nero did not see that the God of the Jews was above his own sun god in authority, right? Of course, they're going to think their God is better. But as the arrows that he shot were zipping through the air, Hashem ordained a miracle, making the arrows curve in the air and soar further than their natural course would have taken them into the city of Yerushalayim, as most of the commentators agreed happened. That's what they said happened, right? Nero was taken aback by this revelation, thinking to himself, who has the power to interfere with the authority of the sun god? Right? Because the way he interpreted it, as we're explaining it, is that he was doing a test with the sun god, and he was expecting it to fall, and the sun god was going to point towards Jerusalem. If that's it, he would go. But now, it seemed to him that his test was being interfered with. He shot, expecting it to fall, but it just turns and flies this way, not in the direction of the sun god. Sun is east to west. It just turned that way. So he's saying, what's going on over here? Who's doing this? Could it have been the God of the place into which the arrows unnaturally flew? Yerushalayim, the Jews. He wanted to reconfirm this hypothesis, so he shot to the east and west again, the path of the sun, once more. And again, Hashem miraculously guided the arrows towards Yerushalayim. Then he shot in the directions of north and south, totaling 6 arrows now. Why did he shoot north and south? Why north and south? In order to test how the other gods of the Roman pantheon, who corresponded to other constellations, other mazalot, other star formations in the dome that we see, north and south, how they would fare against this revelation of the God of the Jews, as the Maharal pointed out. That's what he was testing, because they had many gods. Sure enough, every arrow swooshed through the air into Yerushalayim, even the north and south ones. So look at note 1. We have to say that he was stationed a good distance from Yerushalayim, such that the southward arrow that he shot from his direction, which is right directly in line with Yerushalayim, would not have naturally landed in Yerushalayim without divine intervention. Rather, it had to be flown more, as the Maharsha explained. So we're taking that, we're subscribing to that view. This is unlike the Ben Yehoyada who said that they were positioned diagonally. So we're saying like the Maharsha. Fine. In the middle of a complicated sugya. If you want, you can grab it. You're going to be in the video. Say hi to everybody. Okay. So we're on page 72. In the middle of a complicated thing, but do your best. So now, at this point, Nero's heart started to turn. He's seeing this intervention of Hashem as the God of the Jews, who had just revealed his power to him, steadily filled his mind. Thus, a total of 6 arrows landed in Yerushalayim, we're saying, corresponding to the letter Vav. Vav is the 6th letter. Vav is the 6th letter of the alphabet. And the gematria, therefore, is 6. The letter Vav, not coincidentally, is also shaped like an arrow. Right? It's just a straight line. This was orchestrated by Hashem as a hint, as the Ben Yehoyada mentioned, that the cause of this tragedy was sinful speech, lashon hara, which parallels the type of damage dealt by an arrow. We said before, the arrow does the same damage, basically, as lashon hara, because it does damage at a distance. Right? That's in note 3 in the Amudei Chatzar above. We explained it over there. On a deeper note, however, we have to say, the letter Vav is known as the Vav HaChibur, the Vav of attachment, right? Because its grammatical function, the letter Vav, in the language Hebrew, is to conjoin 2 ideas or subjects, like the English and. It means and. It serves as a connector, which was something that was lacking amongst the Jewish people of that era. Extremely so. They were divided extremely so at that point in history, as we explained. Right? The incident of Chatzar by Chatzar was an incident of division. The word Chatzar, according to one of the interpretations of Maharal, was that it means division. Because of this division, they were missing this Vav factor, the connecting factor, and that's why they got all these arrows miraculously that landed into Yerushalayim. The arrows look just like Vavs. And the arrows also Lashon hara. It's all connected. Look at note number 3. It's an important historical note. We're going to explain what exactly were the political divisions of the time amongst the Jews. Note number 3, it says, they were divided politically and socio-economically, which with starkly different viewpoints on religion as well. And also on how to deal with the Roman overlords. The 4 major political groups were the following. 4 groups. The first one, in English they call them the Sadducees. In Hebrew we call them the Tzedukim. They were the corrupted temple cult who had close ties with the Romans. Basically the original Reformed Jews. And they denied certain basic principles of Judaism. And they effectively, they were the first, one of the first reform movements in Judaism, and they were very corrupt, and they misinterpreted the whole Torah. They didn't believe in the oral Torah. That was Tzedukim. They wanted to live with the Romans. They were making money off them.
What's your name?
Tzedukim.
Name of the Karaites?
No, Karaites a little different, similar but different. Number 2, the second group were in English they call them the Pharisees, but in Hebrew we call them the Perushim. It literally means lifrosh, means to separate, the separators, separatists. Which means whenever there's a new group that is radical, that's not what God wants, the original traditionalists get up and separate for them, say no, we're not a part of them. That's why they're called Perushim. And these Perushim, this is the rabbinic Jews who studied Torah law. This is the Tanaim of the time. This is the real Chachamim, the real Tzaddikim. Comprised of the Tanaim were the sages of the Mishnah, and it's the group that would develop into what is Orthodox Judaism today. Okay, so we're technically Perushim. Third group in English is called the Essenes. That was an extremist group, and they would isolate themselves in cave communities in eager anticipation of the imminent coming of the Mashiach. They said, listen, this whole world is too crazy for us. We're going to go separate, live in caves, out in the wilderness, and we're going to wait for Mashiach. And it's believed that the writers of the Dead Sea Scrolls were these, because they found the Dead Sea Scrolls in these caves. They believe that they were written by these Essenes. The fourth group is the zealots, a lot of different names. Zealots means they have a lot of zeal, a lot of passion. They're called kanaim, they're called baryonim. We're going to talk about them in later chapters. Those are the ones who instigated much trouble by insisting that the yoke of the Romans be overthrown via physical rebellion. Put simply, they wanted to fight. They said, we got to fight these Romans, and we got to get rid of them. Even though they're trained mercenary armies, and we're just a bunch of Jews over here, they wanted to fight. Diplomacy was not an option, only to fight. See more about them in the next chapter. We're going to see in the next few chapters, there's a lot about them. So the point is, they were divided. Who was right, who was wrong? It's not the point here. The point here, there was a huge division, and that makes God upset. When the father has many children, and he sees that the children are not unified, that they're always arguing and bickering, even though some of them, one of them is surely right, one of them is wrong, one of them is instigating. It doesn't matter. They're all his kids. He wants them to love each other. He wants them to be one unit. And if they're not, they get punished. Right? A lot of times, father comes home from work or whatever, and the kids are yelling and screaming at each other, fighting over a toy or a candy or something. And each one of them has a story. He did this, she did that, I did it first, he did it first, blah, blah, blah. The father doesn't know what actually happened. He can't sit down and do a court case and then trial by jury. Okay, what is your witnesses? What is he going to do? He says, you know what? Give me the candy. You're all punished until you figure out how to get along. They all get punished. And that's basically what happened here. They were divided. Sure, some of them are right, some of them are wrong. But they're all Jews. They were divided, made God very upset, and brought down these judgments, these dinim, these punishments that they all suffered for. They all suffered for it. Good, let's continue over here. The bottom of page 72. Where are we? 927. Okay. Let's go a little bit further. So, the Jewish people, they failed to connect together, and instead they propagated division through their sinful speech about each other. In this way, the arrows themselves represent the missed opportunity for connection, and what happened to the arrows, which they flew miraculously to Yerushalayim, represent a deeper version of the same thing, deeper version of that missed opportunity for connection, as we shall explain below. Now, we're about to enter a very deep concept over here, and we only have 2 minutes. So let's just start it, and then we'll start again next week on this very paragraph. A very important paragraph here. We're on page 73. A very important paragraph about the depth of the function of the mouth. What is the purpose of the mouth and how important it is as an organ in the human body. Let's start reading. Yerushalayim is the world's hotspot for connection. How so? By being the mouth of the world. Yerushalayim is the mouth of the world. What does that mean? Let's explain. All central things in the creation are designed based on the same ethereal, meaning godly, supernal, blueprint, including the earth, all living beings, especially humans and trees as well, and even the layout of the temple itself. They're all based on the same blueprint, which is the 10 Sefirot, the image of God. That's what it is. Tzelem Elokim. This is because all of existence follows the template of the 10 Sefirot, the 10 emanations of God, which themselves are arranged by the same scheme. One of the most, again, just to remind, we put on a graphic at the very last page 527, of what they look like conceptually, how they work. We're going to refer to them a lot throughout the book. Here, we want to say the following. One of the most crucial parts of this template is the mouth. This can be understood when considering the human body. Right? God created us in a certain way, in an image, for us to understand deeper things about the world. The mouth has three main functions: speaking, eating, and kissing. Kissing is a function of the mouth. All of which are founded in forging connection. All three of these things connect. They make connections. How? Speaking, when used properly, of course, is a means of connection. It's a medium of exchange of ideas and concepts. That's how we relate to each other, right? But when studied objectively, speech is a quite remarkable thing, in so much as it takes that which exists in the speaker's thought realm, okay, and it reveals it in the realm of the actual. It transfers what's in my mind, which is intangible. You can't hold it in a test tube, what's in my mind, what I'm thinking. But how do I reveal it to you? How do I put it out into the physical world? Speech, expression, speech. The speech is then heard by the listener's auditory apparatus. Fancy word for your ears, okay? But I call it the auditory apparatus because this is one of the most amazing things in the world. If you learn about it, how it works, it blows your mind. Like, to think that came randomly, you have to be on drugs or completely in denial of truth. It boggles my mind up here. Just the ear itself. Fine. What I say enters your ears, correct? And that sparks the formation of the very thought that I had into the listener's mind. I just did a airdrop, right? Airdrop from my brain to your brain via speech. Of ideas and thoughts, intangible things. It's an amazing thing. And speech is the carrier of that, right? What could be deeper? What could be a deeper form of connection? That's what it is, that my mind connects to your mind through speech. So again, we're going to stop there. We have to talk about eating and kissing next week. We'll talk about speech again, how these three things are connectors, and then we'll see how it connects back to our Gemara. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen ve'amen.